The border tensions between Thailand and Cambodia had been one of the most sensitive and volatile disputes in Southeast Asia in recent years. Rooted in long-standing disagreements over territorial demarcation along their shared frontier, the conflict had repeatedly resurfaced over decades, often triggered by military incidents, political pressure, and competing historical claims. In 2025, the situation escalated more seriously than in previous years. Armed clashes broke out in disputed border areas, involving exchanges of artillery fire and rapid military mobilizations on both sides. The fighting raised alarm across the region, with fears that the confrontation could spiral into a prolonged conflict affecting wider Southeast Asian stability. Civilian populations living near the border bore the immediate consequences. Thousands were displaced, local trade was disrupted, and cross-border movement was heavily restricted. Schools and markets in affected areas were shut down intermittently as security conditions deteriorated. As tensions continued into early 2026, diplomatic pressure began building within ASEAN, the regional bloc that traditionally emphasizes peaceful dispute resolution and non-escalation among member states. At the center of ASEAN's diplomatic response was the Philippines, which held the rotating chairmanship in 2026 under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. In this role, the Philippines positioned itself as a neutral facilitator, offering diplomatic space for dialogue between conflicting parties. Rather than framing itself as a power broker, the Philippine government emphasized consensus building and dialogue facilitation. The approach aligned with ASEAN's long-standing principle of resolving disputes through consultation rather than coercion. Behind the scenes, diplomatic efforts intensified to bring both Thailand and Cambodia back to structured negotiations. Communication channels between the two governments had weakened during the height of the crisis, making third-party facilitation increasingly important. The turning point came when ASEAN arranged high-level engagement hosted in the Philippines. The objective was not to immediately resolve the territorial dispute, but to reduce tensions, prevent further escalation, and restore formal diplomatic communication between the two sides. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., acting in his capacity as ASEAN chair, played a central hosting and facilitation role in the discussions. His administration coordinated separate and joint meetings with the leadership of both countries, ensuring that dialogue remained active and structured. The Cambodian delegation was led by Prime Minister Hun Manet, who had been navigating both domestic expectations and international diplomatic pressure during the crisis. On the Thai side, Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul represented Bangkok in the talks, facing similar pressures to maintain a firm stance on sovereignty while avoiding further escalation. Throughout the discussions, ASEAN's broader concern was preventing the conflict from destabilizing regional security and economic cooperation. The dispute, although bilateral in nature, had the potential to affect trade routes, border economies, and investor confidence in the region. During the high-level engagements, discussions focused on several key areas: reducing military tensions along the border, re-establishing communication channels between defense and foreign ministries, and creating mechanisms to prevent accidental clashes. Another important topic was humanitarian coordination, particularly for civilians living in disputed or buffer zones. The aim was to ensure that local populations would not continue to bear the brunt of political and military standoffs. While the discussions were complex and sensitive, diplomatic sources described the tone as constructive. Both sides acknowledged a continued confrontation would not serve their long-term national interests, one of the clearest in time. The NATs expressed during the diplomatic engagement reflected a growing regional understanding that escalation would only lead to mutual losses. As emphasized during the talks, Thailand and Cambodia are two neighboring countries. It is best that we avoid conflict. It only brings losses and suffering, he said. The statement captured the broader spirit of the negotiations, which focused less on territorial positions and more on the practical need to avoid further violence. President Marcos Jr., in his role as ASEAN chair, reinforced the importance of dialogue and regional cooperation. The Philippines emphasized that the purpose of hosting the talks was to provide a neutral environment where both sides could engage without external pressure or loss of face. The ASEAN framework played a key role in shaping the structure of the discussions. Rather than pushing for immediate resolution of sovereignty issues, the focus remained on confidence-building measures and gradual restoration of trust. Of the key outcomes of the meetings was the agreement to re-establish formal communication channels between Thailand and Cambodia. This included commitments to reopen diplomatic lines between foreign ministries and establish structured dialogue mechanisms for border management. Both sides also expressed willingness to explore joint technical discussions in the future, particularly regarding border mapping, verification processes, and historical claims review. While these steps did not resolve the underlying dispute, they represented an important shift away from confrontation and toward managed engagement. The role of ASEAN mediation was particularly significant because it provided a neutral diplomatic platform. In highly sensitive disputes such as this, direct bilateral negotiations are often complicated by domestic political considerations and public pressure. ASEAN's involvement helped reduce those pressures by framing discussions within a regional cooperative context. Throughout the process, President Marcos Jr. emphasized that the Philippines was not acting as an arbiter imposing solutions, but rather as a facilitator enabling dialogue. This distinction was important in maintaining trust among all parties involved. The meetings also highlighted the importance of sustained diplomatic engagement. Rather than expecting immediate breakthroughs, ASEAN's approach focused on incremental progress, recognizing that deeply rooted territorial disputes require long-term negotiation processes. While no formal peace treaty or final resolution emerged from the talks, the diplomatic outcome was widely viewed as a stabilizing step. The reduction in rhetoric and the restoration of communication channels were seen as critical in preventing further escalation. Observers noted that conflicts of this nature often move in cycles, with periods of escalation followed by diplomatic intervention and temporary stabilization. The goal of ASEAN's involvement was to extend the stabilization end phase and reduce the likelihood of renewed clashes. In the aftermath of the talks, both Thailand and Cambodia agreed to continue engaging through ASEAN-supported mechanisms. This included follow-up meetings, technical consultations, and ongoing dialogue at the foreign minister level. The Cambodian leadership under Prime Minister Hun Manet expressed cautious optimism about the direction of talks, emphasizing the importance of regional cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Similarly, the Thai government under Prime Minister Anutin Chanvirakul reiterated its commitment to protecting national interests while avoiding unnecessary escalation. On the ground, the impact of the diplomatic breakthrough was felt cautiously. In border regions, local communities welcomed the reduction in tensions, but remained aware that long-term stability had not yet been fully secured. Many residents had experienced repeated cycles of tension in previous years, leading to cautious expectations. Security analyze. The Chu noted that while the political atmosphere had improved, military readiness along the border had not been significantly reduced. This indicated that trust building was still in its early stages and that any future incidents could potentially reignite tensions if not carefully managed. Still, the ASEAN-led engagement represented a meaningful shift in tone. Instead of unilateral posturing or military signaling, the focus moved towards structured diplomacy and regional cooperation. For the Philippines, role of facilitator reinforced its position within ASEAN as an active contributor to regional stability. Under President Marcos Jr.'s leadership, the country used its chairmanship to promote dialogue-based solutions to regional disputes. The broader message emerging from the Cebu-hosted discussions was that stability in Southeast Asia depends not only on formal agreements, but also on continuous engagement, trust building, and diplomatic patience. As the meetings concluded, ASEAN leaders reiterated that the path forward would require sustained cooperation between Thailand and Cambodia. while significant challenges remain. The reopening of communication channels marked an important step away from confrontation. In the end, the crisis was not ended by a single action or a single leader. Instead, it entered a phase of de-escalation shaped by regional diplomacy, ASEAN mediation, and renewed political will from both sides. Within that process, the role of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. stood as that of a facilitator, helping bring two tense neighbors back to the table and supporting a fragile but important step towards stability in the region.